Are we good to go?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, let's start by getting present. I'm going to suggest that we all raise our palms to the sky and take 3 deep breaths, thinking I'm on the inhale, here on the exhale. 3 breaths in witness to the infinite above. And turning your palms down, take 3 deep I'm here breaths for the infinite below. Now, with our hands on our hearts, let's take 3 more I'm here breaths for where we are, stuck in between the 2 great beyonds, together. We are here at the time of the first harvest, suspended between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. It's the time of descent and return, when the wheat is reborn as bread, the grape as wine, and we too are transformed. So I think now would be a good time to light our candles, if you've got one handy. Ooh, on the tiny altar that is the hagstone. It's Lammas, Lunasa, August Eve, and the harvest moon has risen, at least in Korea. It will rise next for Lazelle in Amsterdam, me in England, Sarah over in the US, and finally Holly in Texas, before returning, now waning, to Issa's sky. Issa, can you share the picture of this evening's full moon? Gorgeous. When did you take that?
Just 5 minutes ago. Just now.
Oh, beautiful.
It's so perfect.
Wow. It's amazing. She just moved out of my line of sight, like just 45 minutes ago.
Wow.
Amazing. Wow.
So I'm going to ask Issa if you would mind leading us in Humming to the Moon, that tune that we all know so well. Beautiful, thank you. Now we've all had our moment humming to the moon. You put her back in her box, please, Isa. Okay. Today, we are harvesting the most precious and tricky crop of all, and that is self-esteem. And I've invented a little game so that we can all get the opportunity to receive a personal harvest from one of the others. So let's begin. Who speaks for Isa? Lizelle.
I speak for Isa. Yay!
Isa, do you trust Lizelle?
I do trust Lizelle.
And do you pledge to accept her words as true?
And I do pledge to accept her words as true.
Okay, then. If you close your eyes, Isa, and open your heart, and Lizelle, share what you need to share.
Beloved Isabella, beautiful Isa, our deeply loved moon. We reflect so much on your power of reflection that I sometimes fear that you might feel that we do not see you, but we do. You are too beautiful not to be seen. Our scientist, someone in whom moral and mental powers meet, compassionate, kind, understanding, always ready to speak on someone else's behalf, to defend those who can't defend themselves. I always feel as if I'm not quite done listening to you, whether you are speaking or singing. I always long for more. Your insights are profound. There is so much more there that we need to unpack. Thank you, Isa, for the beauty you make, for all your seen and as yet unseen work. I am proud of you. In fact, from the oldest to the youngest, I look up to you. Don't worry, Isa. Whatever happens or doesn't happen, you will be okay. In fact, it will be beautiful, good and true, because you will make it beautiful. I have faith in you. And I am so looking forward to deepening the work we are doing and will still do together.
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 Who speaks for Lizelle? Lizelle, do you trust Holly?
I do.
And do you pledge to accept her words as truth?
I will.
Okay, Lizelle, close your eyes and open your heart.
Lizelle, I didn't actually write anything down. I just sat with you close to my heart. And there's almost this like tremulous fear of reflecting on the depth of care and love and appreciation that I have for you. That there's something in me that is in awe that that I'm even worthy of such beauty, such strength, such wisdom. When I think about you, I think of a queen, a mother, a child, a woman who knows her own worth. That totally inspires me. You are one of these people that I know is not going to let me fail. And someone, when I see a reflection that comes back at me of, you are a strong, powerful, loving, kind, generous human. And I really am just in awe of your strength, and as a true woman with an educated heart, your ability to live passionately with your heart on your sleeve, and how you marry that so wonderfully with a mind that is sharp, with the sword and a sharp mind. You are a sister, and and there's a part of me that is just in awe of, like, that I'm worthy of such beauty and kindness and love in my life. And I just, there's just no words to express my care and gratitude for who you are and what you reveal and draw out of me. You've just drawn out so much strength within me and self-love, and I don't know how to repay it, but I love you so much, and thank you for your fight in life. I'm glad we're doing it together.
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 Rebecca. Who speaks for Rebecca? Sarah. Rebecca, do you trust her?
Yes, I trust Sarah.
Do you pledge to accept her words as truth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Rebecca, close your eyes and open your heart. Sarah, offer your words.
Rebecca, a ritualist that dances through this world, making ripples and waves. And oh, oh, do the waves love when she sits by the sea. The wind that rides on their backs begs to kiss her skin. How they love when she sits by the sea. Love rustles, leaves rustle, and the moss soaks in its dewy wonder, waiting to hear her scurry by. How they love when she enters the forest, where once a quartet of souls sat who gathered before, stayed seated around the fire, gently calling her forth, at first by name, and then in spirit. And like Mary Poppins, she popped in for what was to be just a minute. And now it's turned into an everlasting embrace. How they love when she enters the chat. And just like Mary Poppins, our dear Rebecca carries with her a magic bag of trinkets and lockets of space and time. A wake of possibility flows behind her, and if you catch the wave just right, you will be filled entirely with delight. Of course, the ancestors take pride in this powerful little sister that moves space through time in ritual. She is honorable and moves through this world deliberately. They see her sacrifices. That's why the leaves rustle and the moss waits and the sea dances and the wind hurries. They know if they are to be merely observed by her, they can be more real. The trees want to be noticed, and they never have to worry about that when she's around. They know they're seen. They know they're loved. She'll even dance with them, and they really love that. A heart free as a fluttering bird, and yet somehow she binds us together with every inhale of sweet grass. May your playful spirit encourage us all to never see the world the same. Through the eyes of Rebecca, we get to imagine we get to imagine how the world is already better from right where we stand. All this time you were here.
Mm. Mm.
Together.
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 Who speaks for Sarah?
I do.
Sarah. And do you trust Issa?
Yes.
And do you pledge to accept her words as truth?
Yes.
Okay, then. And close your eyes and open your heart.
I think my words are half written, half improvised, and that seems extremely accurate for Sarah. Yeah. So statement of admiration, I wrote. I admire the depth and vibrancy you bring to the room, the way you weave discipline, fun, and creation into this amazing tapestry. How you teach us all to be more real, to connect with our darkest, deepest center, and still be us. You are the beautiful hue of amber in the sunlight. Thank you. I think, yeah, just like all those gardens you work with, I don't know if you know how much nutrients, how much layers and layers of just magic you bring to all of us, to our conversations, to our group, to our friendship, to our sisterhood. And I know in many ways you think you're someone who's learning, but to me, you're teaching us so much. Just how to weave a life for yourself that is truly, totally you, despite everything. And that is just something I admire so much. How hard you fought to be you without compromising the rest of the world. That's such a tricky balance. And yeah, I just hope I can keep learning more from you.
Together.
Together.
Yeah.
Issa, would you mind leading the scripts in the chat?
Who speaks for Holly?
That would be me.
Holly, do you trust Rebecca?
Well, I know Rebecca likes to lie, but I trust her lies. I trust her lies. Yes, I trust.
So do you pledge to accept her words as truth?
Yes, I do.
Holly, close your eyes and open your heart.
Okay, I think we all know this, and it's a difficult thing to put into words, but I've done my best. There is a special and unique quality to Holly's love. there are certain people who are so real, so pushed up against the front of themselves, so present, that being loved by them is like an invitation to become more real yourself. And it's in everything. It's not just the way she listens to you. It's not just the way she looks at you, or how she finds like the perfect, deepest, beautifulest way to say what you're thinking, but it's in her wicked laugh and in her silliness. It's in everything. It's throughout her. And I think I felt it at its most deepest when we were all together. And I, in exhaustion, rested my head on her lap for a few moments, and she stroked my hair. And I remember thinking, I am being loved by someone who is so real that she is making me real. And I think her love could change your life. And I think it's changed mine.
Together.
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 Ooh. It's time for a sacrament. Has everyone got their cherries at the ready? So if you just hold your cherry in your palms and study it. And I don't know about you guys, but the cherry trees around here blossom just after the spring equinox. And they blossom before they leaf. So you get that big frothy white or pink blossom against the black bark of the tree. And the early bees pollinate them. They're hermaphroditic, so they sort of pollinate themselves. And then after the sexy times, the blossom falls like confetti and leaves form. And then fruit, which is of course small and green to begin with, and it ripens past that amber color into this deep burgundy. And now they are ripe, and now we are ready. Before the season of letting go is a moment of pleasure. So I want you to imagine the sweet pink flesh of your life ripened in the sun, and think of something, some quality or accomplishment that you're proud of from the last year.
Mm.
And when we've all chosen something, let's eat our cherries and really deeply taste them, be in that moment of eating the cherry and the full experience. And this is my first one of the year, so I'm really going to enjoy this. And shall we wash that down with a little drink? I've got myself a teeny tiny bottle of Prosecco.
Aww.
Which is the best way to celebrate.
Yeah, Black Widow.
Ooh.
And guess what it is?
Yeah, Sarah. Blackberries.
Blackberries. Which
Nice.
you were talking about blackberries. And I also have a widow's peak that I'm hiding within the moon.
Ooh.
My chalice. Hold on.
Oh, I didn't get the pop I was hoping for.
Wait, we
Okay.
lost the holly. She had to run for her drink. What you got?
You
Issa?
get jealous. I think.
That's a
She's
bottle.
sparkling water.
Gorgeous.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Lizelle, yeah.
There
Ah,
they
yes.
They meet again.
Okay, let's raise our glasses to the green light of Viriditas, turning to gold, to transformation. Happy Lamus. Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think.
Yes, it is.
Whoa. Goosebumps. It's later than you think.
Mm. That's
Oh. And I was
Mm.
going to suggest we all rattle our cherry stone jars, but I left mine over there on my altar. Do you guys have yours to hand?
Yes.
Okay, let me just quickly grab mine because I feel like it's a good celebratory sound.
Oh, great.
I feel like I'm very optimistic about like how long my life will be.
Yeah.
Right, exactly, yes. I have mine in a teacup, so you can tip me over and pour me out.
The height of summer.
Yes.
Here's the next 6 weeks.
So these cherries I got, I just got to say, because this was exciting. There was cherries for $5 in a much smaller bag that I was like, I don't even know if there's 32 in here. And then there was a bigger bag of just like standard organic cherries. And I was like, I'm going to get the expensive ones. I looked it up. It was like, there's a small window that you can get Rainier cherries. And I've also gone up to the Pacific Northwest quite a few times in the past few years. Anyway, so this man behind me checking out at the counter, because the girl asked me, she was like, so what's so special about these cherries? I was like, I don't know. And the man behind me was like, they're the best cherries. Like, they are so sweet. They're so good. They really were. Like, I was really craving that last cherry.
Lovely.
So that was my
Yeah, I
cherry.
thought your guys' experience of eating your however many cherry would be very different
Yeah.
to mine eating my first of the year.
It was good though.
Oh, well, that's my my Lammas ritual, and we're ready to talk tarot, I guess.
From making art to talking about art.
Yes, indeed.
Temperance.
Mm.
Temperance as we drink.
Mm.
Moderation, right?
Greek word sophrosyn, temperance.
Hmm?
It's one of the cardinal virtues, I think.
Yes. Well, I'll read I'll read from the Gentle Tarot because it's, you know, that's what we do. And then this particular card, the woman, naked woman. Oh, she's got all these beautiful birds around her, and she's on a tightrope, surrounded by maybe bluebonnets, with some whales maybe underneath her. So here we see a person balancing over a running stream. Their intention is as calm as the birds and water around them. The 3 salmon swimming toward them in the stream represent the mind, body, spirit. This card may be asking you to listen. Check in to see if your body, mind, and spirit are in balance. What do you need? Balance is key to having clear thoughts and clear ears for listening to our heart's pull. Temperance, like moderation, inspires us to find the quiet strength of our middle ground to best direct our actions, thoughts, and words. And then we have, you know, the Crowley deck as well, the art. So, which, you know, the eagle and the lion drinking from a chalice. And I believe this is Diana, I was reading about it. I think it's the Huntress Diana. So there's our starting point. Or our end point. Oh yeah, good.
Oh yeah. Was that the traditional or was that a different one?
It's the Rider
That's a
Waite.
different one.
Oh, this is the classic.
Yeah, that's the classic there. That's a triangle on the angel's chest, am I right?
It's a triangle within a square.
Okay, so what does that signify again?
I'm so glad you asked.
Yes, you have notes.
Spirit, what I read was it's spirit, like coming into matter, coming into form. So the triangle represents that spirit.
Yeah, I have here that it's fire. The triangle, the upwards triangle is fire, and then the square around it is earth. So fire as in humans, as in the spirit of humans bound by earth, like the natural laws. So yeah, spirit coming into reality, which is exactly what art is, isn't it?
Mm. Mm.
In the Neoplatonic, they've got like a triangle made of 10 dots, and the level of the 3 dots is psyche, so spirit or soul. So it's also that soul realm indeed. And then the 4 is the triangle, the square, the earth. So temperance and the human spirit or human soul.
Mm-hmm. And it follows the hangman, right?
I was wondering, what's the number?
Yeah.
What's the number? Sorry.
14.
Okay.
Or does it follow the hangman, or it follows death? So
Death.
death before it, then temperance, and then the devil. And from what I was kind of reading about it, you know, it's like before you can really engage with the devil, before you can really know how to work with that energy, you have to have kind of learned temperance. And then of course following death is this temperance, is this merging of spirit, you know, coming up from the underworld and then back into the Empress's realm. And yeah, I was reflecting on that just in my personal life, like how much I had all those years of like Zen practice to really get my mind, to try to kind of really understand my mind and my inner world more deeply. And how that was really important then to being able to like handle a lot more energy in life. That's what I was reflecting on.
Yeah, I see it as like a moment of sort of gathering yourself before a journey, because in the Rider-Waite there's like a little path going up into the mountains, and then what looks like the sunrise behind the mountains, but it's got like a little crown around the sun, little crown of stars. So it's almost like you have to take a moment here before you can begin this journey up to your destiny, I guess, up over the mountains. So yeah, I see it like the example of your time in the sort of Zen tradition is perfect, of a time of gathering and like getting everything sort of still within before you can take that next step and move on. I really love in this card that it has yellow water irises, which are one of my favorite flowers, coming up. I don't really know what that signifies, apart from they are out and about at the time of midsummer. And yeah, I believe they have some magical significance. I think perhaps they were placed on images of the Sphinx, water irises, but they're a very strange and beautiful flower that comes up by the side of rivers. And I love recognizing them in that image. I don't know why Crowley chose to represent this as art. Does anyone have any insight on why he chose to make this art instead of temperance? Or what the link between art and temperance is?
I think maybe it's in the pictures, because in the temperance in the original cards has the 2 cups that we talked about. That was very coincidental that it was part of our previous ritual. And in the art card it's also, and then he makes use of the art of alchemy, I think. So, and by the 2, mixing the 2, and I think maybe there's a hint at the sophrosyn, if not temperance, that's needed in the alchemical process, in the journey of the alchemical journey. It takes a lot of effort and time and devotion and temperance. So that's what I'm making of. I think he means art, the alchemical art.
I wonder whether you could say there's an alchemical quality to all art, though. Isn't that like, I mean, I'm going to see alchemy everywhere, but this, like the combining of things. I was thinking about like I don't know how this connects, but I was thinking about what people have been talking about the AI making images. I can't remember what it's called, but that thing, and how it basically like goes and looks at all the images that have been created within a certain theme. So you put in your text and describe whatever you want, and then it goes and looks at all of the images, and then it mashes them all together and creates a new image. And I've heard, as someone who does illustration for a living, like I've heard a lot of my people in my field worrying about that, and then I've also heard a lot of people saying no, because it's not truly creative, it's just mashing stuff together. It doesn't have any spark of real like human creation in it, it's just a combination. And then I think about my own creative process and how much what I do is mashing stuff together. Like as someone comes to me and I listen to their story, and then I think about the symbols that they've brought up, and then I maybe have my own dreams about it, and I combine that, and I mash all that together, and something comes out of it. And maybe it's just like a matter of faith that I believe that there is something unique about that makes it more than just a machine combining things. But the idea of combining things to make something new, that's alchemy, and that's art, and maybe that's thought, I don't know. And I'm just interested in like, and maybe this is one of those things that can't actually be found because it's ineffable, but is there something else, or are we just combinatory machines? And if there is something else, what is it, and how do I harness it for profit?
Right.
Well, I'm reminded of what we talked about, that the fire in the square, the spirit. Maybe we've got that.
Yeah.
That is what we can monetize.
Ensoulment. Okay, so a lot of things are coming alive for me because this card is represented by Sagittarius. That's Jupiter. That's Zeus. That's truth. Infinite pursuit of truth. And so but that gets out of balance. And so the interesting thing is we're on the Aquarius full moon today. And with Aquarius, there's the water bearer. And this water bearer is going back and forth with this water and pouring it into two different containers. And the thing about Aquarius, well, Aquarius is just like really conflicted. It's ruled by Saturn, or is it? Is it ruled by Uranus? And is Uranus the father, or is Saturn the father? Is Saturn time, or is Cronus time? Is Cronus Cronus, or is, it's like there's so many dualities to Saturn. It's like, what is he not? And with Aquarius, it's this rebellious energy. It's like, I can't be anything like my father, so fuck it, I'm gonna go full thing the opposite way. And so there's something there about balance too. And when we're talking about, well, weaving a web. So in our meeting today for my astrology group, the community that we're now forming, it's really based on mycelium and forming a network, and where two fusion points come together, as opposed to it needing to revolve around one thing being the entity through which alchemy happens. It's actually like a full net. And we've been talking about that too, because we had the reticulum when we were talking about our journey here together. So when spiders were coming up very present here, and then webs are coming up very present in my other group, it was like, oh, so that's even coming together. And then, so wow, it's like an ecosystem. And so I don't know, it's like really alive for me, that it's almost like this card for me is kind of transforming from being Jupiter ruled, this kind of pursuit of one truth, to now being this very Aquarius card of like rebellion against that tradition, and I don't know, doing things in a new, unique way. So alchemizing there too, with this like new Uranian, inventive, innovative energy.
I really want to read from this book. It's one of the books that's recommended in this course by John that I'm taking. When I read it, I had to think of our lying Rebecca and all of us. So I'm just going to read like one sentence or two. Nietzsche says that sincerity is cultivated by our trying to have God and conscience. Though we shall discuss this in more detail later, we may mention here that he, Nietzsche, considers lies as permissible creative acts for will to power to be fulfilled, and illusions of various kinds as necessary for the preservation and enhancement of humanity. And I feel that's what we said last time. And I feel that, Sarah, it really connects to what you just said as well. That spirit of, because Nietzsche is, of course, the ultimate rebellious spirit, Übermensch, desiring entity.
Mm. Yeah, and it's funny because Nietzsche killed God, or was like one of them, one of the people that killed God. So in that sense, it is taking on that Uranian energy of, and I say Uranian, even though it is Saturn that killed Uranus in the myth, but in astrology, it is that Aquarius was once ruled by Saturn and is now ruled by Uranus. So it just keeps happening. Father kills, or son kills father, son kills father, and the new reign comes in. That's what Aquarius energy is about. So yeah, that's really interesting.
But
And this idea, sorry, go ahead.
I think that's what Nietzsche is also about, the new rule, reign coming in. He talks about creating new values. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I was saying the same thing. New.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
Okay.
say. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we're saying the same thing.
I think I also want to presence the etymology here, temperance, temporal, time. That's another huge part of alchemy and of making art. And something I've been working with quite a bit is right timing. Right? So knowing when the cooking time is, the ratio, and when it's ready. I often notice where I don't have that temperance or that temporal, that seasonality, bringing something into the world before it's ready. Sometimes I'm just trying to push and force the art or push and force the thing to happen rather than like trusting that the cooking time, it's gonna, like Rebecca was saying, is there this like kind of other thing happening that's bigger than me? And this temperance, the way I've been walking with it in my life currently is this sort of idea of like, I don't need to force change onto anyone else, or I don't need to force change. I just got to open up. Actually, I've got to do a lot less. And I can't force the art. I can't force the change. And so trusting and letting things move at a time, at their own right timing. Like timing has kind of been everything for me right now. And this kind of fits in, I think, with it.
I so relate to that with artistic creation, with the like forcing. In fact, with the ritual that we just did, I forced it. I had the ritual, like what I thought was going to be the ritual. And then I went and sat out on my back steps and smoked some weed and ripped that all up and started again. And wrote what we just did. And I was like, damn it, I wasted the whole afternoon planning this ritual that was not good enough to do. And then the actual thing that is the right thing to do comes to me in like in this weird in between moment. But I that's the story of my life. It happens all the time when I need an idea for a ritual or for an illustration or whatever artistic creation I'm doing. I will sit and force, and then when I relax and go for a walk, the idea comes to me, and then I will recriminate myself for the time wasted sitting and forcing. But I think, like as Holly was saying, if I could just trust the process, and like the character on both the Crowley and the Rider-Waite-Smith cards, if I could just keep moving the ideas back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and trust that process, then the thing will come. But there's an act of surrender that has to happen as the artist, to let whatever it is come through you. And that's insanely hard to do, especially when art is so, like, the situation at the moment with modernity on art, and when I say art, I mean, like, high art or whatever, like painting and novels and stuff, is so product focused. Like, it's all about that piece of canvas hanging on the wall with the paint on it, or that book published with all the words printed out. And that is such a weird, and that product is so separate from the artist and their life. The artist is dead, it's all about the product. And historically, that's a very weird attitude towards art, because obviously art was always wound up with religion and ritual and the early, yeah, exactly, practice, yeah. So trying to like deprogram myself from that point of view, and to commit to process over product, and not just in creating a drawing or creating a ritual, but literally in every aspect of my life. I feel like that's me. Water, back and forth right now.
Yeah, I was thinking about Issa while you were talking too, and like how I was asking for process videos, and maybe like that's also commoditizing the whole process part. But I'm just like, it's so interesting, and that's what like drives people to the product now. It's like, let me see what's going on when you do that amazing headpiece.
Maybe this is just me because of the jewelry stuff, I end up looking at a lot of, like, if I go on Instagram, everything I get is just videos of people doing things. And I think it's interesting how in social media there is quite a huge sector of just people doing things. Like, people watching people do things that they'll never even remotely try to do. But it's just, there's this kind of nostalgia, I think, about process and about being able to do something with your hands, or have some more tangible sense of creation, in a way that what I do is it's something I can measure here, and it's not part of a thing that is part of a thing that, of course, everyone that does something, even if you're, let's say, working in a huge corporation, of course you're doing something, but it's so difficult to see. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I do think it's interesting. There's something about practice and process that is being almost fetishized to an extent, I feel. And it's a bit interesting. The other thing that I was gonna say, which is completely, I don't know, I just think it's a funny coincidence, is that there's like a shop not too far from my place. I don't know what they sell. I think they sell clothing. But anyways, it's like this super small shop in a corner of the road, and it has two gigantic like curtains, and one curtain is the Temperance tarot card, and the other one is the sun. And I thought it was like, I just noticed it after we got the card, so I was like, oh wow, it's like a black and white print of the whole card, and like the whole thing is like huge, and that's like one big, curtain. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Curtains. The curtains to the holiest of holies, temperance and the sun. Maybe we can also play with the idea with what you mentioned, the working with your hands, and now the word that you said, the embodied part, but you used the tangible. It was used, but also sensual in our senses. Because when Holly was speaking, I was reminded, Holly, I don't know how that memory came up, long time ago, when we were practicing dialectic tinctura logos with the other two Stoans, you were baking potatoes. And at the end you said, well, my potatoes are ready. And one of the gentlemen asked you, how do you know? Did the timer go off? And you said, no, I can smell it. And so when you were talking about temperance and the time, and we should wait until something is ready, and you smelled it when it was ready, there was like, oh, there's something there as well that we humans have thus far. that the others don't have yet.
The others. That sounds so sinister.
Well, I was also thinking, because John one time said, like, the problem with AI or AGI is that we have forgotten how to interact with God. I'm like, no, we know how to interact with God. You just come to me and my coven. We've got you.
You put them in their place.
Yeah, it's really working with that arousal energy, you know, is so tricky, because we can, so easy to get captured by like how, like, I don't know, I just know for myself, sometimes I just have all this like arousal energy, and can get so restless. And again, there's that kind of challenge with temperance, because it can be so intense that it's like I want to act on it and I want to move it now. And I think of someone like Bruce Lee, you know, who was such a master of when to, like, how to use that, like, what's the right art to make in the moment, you know, what is the right way to move the energy, what is the, as Bonnie would say, what is the action that's going to satisfy. And oftentimes it's, I don't know, I just noticed that sometimes I want to move it, and I move it in the wrong direction. It's like feeding, what we were talking about in the text. It's like knowing when to feed the monsters, like not feeding the monsters, I guess, in a way. There's something there that has just been so alive for me. All this arousal energy, and it's like these monsters that just are so hungry, and they just want to feed on me. They want to feed on my attention, and how to take that arousal energy and actually use it to create art. So instead of this arousal energy that's like angry or just wants to, like, you know, is just hurt and in pain and kind of suffering, it's like alchemizing that and turning it into words of praise. Like, that's what I've been learning, where it's like, instead of being angry, the temperance is like, take that energy and just start speaking poetry to the world around you. Like, notice how beautiful this red color is, and speak poetry to that red color, instead of finding everything that's wrong in a situation, or creating art that's fucking ugly, you know what I mean, or art that, like, is that desecrates something.
A few things jumped up as just words. Tightrope, the death card that goes before, and alchemy. That is alchemy, what you just mentioned.
Yeah, because that's the devil for me. It's like the temperance, and then sometimes that devil wants to come, and it's just like tempting, and it's like, you know, like, and yeah, you've got to have that temperance to kind of go, I'm not feeding that. I'm not fucking feeding that. I'm going to feed this instead. Like, I got this beautiful quote from a book, assigned from Martin Pretschel, this author I follow a lot. And he says, you know, you got to stop fighting against what you hate and start fighting for what it is you love. And I think that is part of that temperance. It's like fighting for what you love. It's like using that energy to feed love, transforming fear into love, rather than feeding more of that, you know, sludge. And again, there's something, the sludge has its own place, but it has a way of, there's an alchemy with that. Like, so it's also like really learning what everyone's gifts are, and learning learning all the different parts that make up the whole, and what those are good. It's like learning the ingredients of life, and learning, you know, your tools, all the different paint colors and all of that, and then knowing what goes where, or how to assemble it in a way that is nourishing rather than, you know, life killing.
Like, how much of it? Because even supplements, like, I have never taken too much fish oil. I used to take tons and tons of fish oil to study in college. And recently I decided I was going to take borage oil with fish oil because borage oil is supposed to help with your thyroid. And I thought that maybe my thyroid might be why I can't gain weight. So I'm taking excess oils and I'm taking them together, which you should take them separately. This is all about that flow that you're talking about. So what happened? My flow got clogged. I had so much oil in my intestines that I was shitting really sticky, heavy shits. And I was like, what's happening? This is weird. And then I'm like thinking, reflecting on the things that I've started to change about my diet and my supplementation. And I'm like, it's the borage oil. It's got to be the borage oil. So sure enough, like, what do? Okay, now I have to think from my data bank of supplement knowledge, what can I do to balance this? And a really nice place to look is like Ayurvedic medicine or ancient Indian medicine, because they're all about balancing your doshas and what you need to, and ancient Chinese medicine is about balance too. That's what all of medicine used to be, is how do you holistically treat the body so that it goes back into balance, not how do we treat the symptoms, you know, like pinpointing each symptom and trying to cover that up, which leads to another symptom. And so then, like, yeah, this whole idea of your health is really about balance too, and working with what you notice in the toilet. So it's like really good to reflect on the toilet too and see what's in there. I mean, at least in the States for sure, it's a really like hush hush topic. You flush real quick, you don't even look at it. Probably most people flush when they're still sitting on the toilet so that just in case anybody else is around, you're not being impolite. So yeah, it's like there's this really weird relationship that we have with very natural things. And I think that's got us out of balance. It's like those very natural things that's actually kind of like what we describe as the dark feminine, because it leads to things like shame and vulnerability. And so these are like topics that we're a little bit afraid to visit, I guess, in like polite society. So that has to get reincorporated back in. Those things that we don't want to talk about, like me talking about my shit right now, not a good look. But people come to me and talk about shit all the time. It's a very normal thing for me because I work in supplements. How many people are like, I'm not breaking down my food, I've got gas, like I've got gas, and they're like belching it on me. Like, I have seen terrible things as a normal human being. I am not a doctor, I am not a nurse, I'm not trained for this, other than I got a wilderness first responder. But I'm also in conversation with the customer, balancing them, helping them to understand what they should and shouldn't know, what they should and shouldn't talk to the doctor about. Because they'll ask me things like, can I take this with my medication? Do I look like somebody that would know the answer to that? No, I have a full moon on my head. You know, like clearly a hippie. You don't want to ask me health questions. I might tell you to trip on some mushrooms. So when they ask me these real health questions, it's because they're so out of balance. They're desperate. This is what being out of balance can cause. Desperation, feeling so lost in this physical world. There's no spirit to bring me out of it. And so that's kind of what I offer to people, is just a, hey, let's look at this bottle. It's really like this, I'm just gonna show you how to do this. And there's something in that guiding sense that's just like, oh, that's all I needed was a little bit of uplifting encouragement that I'm on the right track. I'm at least trying. And then they'll come back the next time. They're like, hey, this is how much D3 is in here, whatever. So yeah, balance is coming into people's just like overall well-being and their meaningfulness.
I feel like what you're giving them, at least in part, is a gift of time. Like, okay, let's take a moment to think, to step back and think about this. What have I been eating? Like all the stuff, all the questions that you'd ask them, like, because we don't have time for that, because it's always the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And you don't have time to deal with the problem because there's already another thing. So the problems just back up and you end up, and like, so we don't have time to balance, we don't have time to pause, we're always rushing on. And that also means that we don't have time to create art. And I noticed this in myself, in my reluctance to experiment, and I'm getting better, but my tendency is to go to the stuff that I know, because then I know, like, if I pick up a pencil to do a drawing, I know I can draw in a certain way, right? So I'll just do a drawing and then I'll have the product and that'll be that. But the kind of the loopy, you know, just letting the pencil go where it will, or just seeing what happens with the clay, that sort of thing, that feels intimidating because it feels like potentially a waste of time, when in fact it is exactly that kind of keeping things moving taking a moment, allowing space for ideas to come into your head and settle, for a new revelation to happen, and to have a movement you can go through, almost like an asana of the pencil or of the mind, or depending what medium you work in, to have that pattern to go through, pouring from one to the other, just to give yourself the space to allow that balance to, I don't know, allow yourself to reflect on the balance or something. And I feel like the reason, and it's funny that Issa was talking about the fetishization of process, because I've noticed that too. And yet, like everything, right? Like we have sex all over the place. Well, I have sex all over the place. No, I mean, you know, it's all in our face all the time. We use it to advertise and stuff. And yet people say, and I don't know how they conduct these surveys, but people say that, you know, the sex lives of teenagers are at an all-time low. They're just not doing it anymore. So it's like there's all this kind of like this fetishization of sex and pornography and all that stuff, but people not actually making love to each other, or whatever teenagers do. So, and I feel like it's the same thing, like the fetishization of process, but people aren't actually getting the clay and experimenting. They're just watching people doing it on YouTube because they don't have the time to actually do it themselves, and it's quicker. Like say you want to do clay is a great example, because you get your hands messy and you get your table messy and everything messy, at least the way I do it. But watching it on YouTube, you don't get anything messy, and then you can move on. So there's something about, there's something weird going on with process, I think, in our culture currently. And and another thing, I don't think it's just in art. I think it's in thought. I think it's like everyone has to have all their ideas fully fleshed out so you can present them in like a slideshow, whereas the kind of like meandering rambly talk that we're doing here isn't so popular, because we're like, I'm just grasping for ideas as they come, and then you guys picking up something and going with, but that's not cool.
No, I was just gonna say, or the willingness to just say something without knowing where it's gonna go, or saying something without even knowing if it's gonna even, you know, resolved into anything congruent. Like it's just like, yeah, maybe I just wasted your time. But yeah, it's interesting. Like you said, there's something about that, about time. But yeah, no, go ahead, Sarah.
Well, because I can just pass it back to you, because this is the thing that Issa does so well, is the really flowy, very and this is what I was going to say, is that I listened to Lex Friedman and Yuval Noah Harari have mine and Lazelle's recap of all of Awakening in a 3-hour segment. They had like, I don't know, 100,000 views in maybe 3 minutes, right? It's like, and Lizelle and I have been having that dialogue about something that John has had, sure, but he's got a lot of views on his too. How many do I and Lizelle have? You guys and maybe 3 dudes. Like, we're not getting the kind of traffic, but we do have really engaged relationships with our viewers. So that is the nice thing about not allowing yourself to become the victim, or the, even yesterday Alex Ebert wrote about audience capture, and how audiences are now throwing things at artists on stage. They don't have any respect for the artist anymore. They don't see them as the gods anymore. They now see them as people they can disrespect, people they can boo off stage. Well, not that wasn't done before, because we are still mourning Sinead O'Connor, but in this era, now people are being violent with their artist, because now they have control over what their artist can and can't say. So there's something to, look at the hummingbird behind Holly. Oh shit, it's not going to be recorded either. Anyways, there was just, he was like, hey. Totally got distracted, but yeah, audience capture. I just got captured by the audience.
But there's something about that fear of wasting time that is crippling, I think.
Yeah. I think that's kind of like what was being described in the post, is that evolution of now I mean, we can't be bored. It's like, if we're bored, something's wrong. I need something to always be engaging my attention. It's why, I mean, I'm seeing it when you sit in church, or in my church anyway, because we also want to be very accepting, inviting, and it's very easy and happy-go-lucky. And I don't know, there's sometimes where I'm just like, can you just put a muzzle on it? But you can't be that way because you're in church, and it's like, no, this is a place where people come together and we're supposed to share love and acceptance and know that, you know, it's a lot of programming that we're undergoing together. And the kids are the most vulnerable to it. And so they need to be distracted at all times. If the priest takes longer than 3 seconds to get a word out, it's chaos and things are getting dropped. And, you know, and so that's just kind of like part of the culture too. So yeah, interesting, this idea of watching art so that you don't have to get messy.
Mm.
I'm also thinking about the art of restraint. That's really coming alive for me. That restraint is sort of an art in and of itself. Like one of the deepest practices I had while at the Zen Center was not scratching the itch. You have to stay still. The itch is and you have to learn then how to not separate from that itch, and then find this incredible. What I discovered was this itch, and it's just driving you nuts. But then when you can find that place, when you can kind of move through that period of discomfort, then all of a sudden the itch becomes this like really erotic, exciting. It's got this tingling and this bubbling, and you're not separate from it, and you become that tingling and that bubbling. And then in the long run, in the long term, it's so much more satisfying to not scratch that fucking itch. It's so much more satisfying. And I think that's something we have. The art of restraint is something. We are in this very adolescent world where we sense that we should have everything we want when we want it now. Every impulse, every urge should be satisfied in the moment you have it. And there's something, one where that tempo, this tempo that we're talking, it goes against the natural tempo of the world. And then there's something so lost about actually a depth. Maybe this is that ensoulment thing. The depth of being able to stay with the trouble until you break through, and then find this like kind of rapturous experience on the other side. So we're not adults, you know, like we're not very mature, I think, generally as a culture, because we don't know how to restrain. We don't know the art of restraint.
But so my mind was going with innocence, because I was just talking about kids too, and I was trying to like rope that back in together, how we have like very disrupting children in a place where it's supposed to be like very like you're reserved. And then like, well, innocence I relate with Issa a lot because that's one of your gene keys too. And so there's this stillness of boredom, of being able to like invite in the creativity in those moments, like you're saying, of working through that restraint of boredom. Like, okay, you're bored. Now what? Like, that's tense. Yes, I know boredom sucks. But then what?
Well, boredom's just a failure of curiosity. Boredom just means you are not being curious about the world around you.
Boredom is closely linked to nihilism, because I've been reading a lot about nihilism, and it's very closely linked. I don't think any of us are grown-ups, and I'm not sure we should be. I always think of the earth as kind of a kindergarten of being. like we're all kindergarten. I even have like different ages for different people. Like, oh yeah, that's a typical 3-year-old. Oh yeah, that's a 7-year-old. He's getting big. He's gonna leave soon. It's like, but yeah, but it's.
Well, boredom's a very typical thing, teenage thing, isn't it? I'm so bored. Like, that sounds like a teenage thing to say. And teenagers are notoriously nihilistic.
Totally. That's the time for initiation. That's the time where you teach people why this shit matters.
Mm.
You know? Otherwise you're like, no one knows what they're doing. Like, we're all gonna die. Why do I care? Why do I give a shit? It's that initiation that says it, like, it's that Peter Pan thing we've been talking about, you know? It's like, you kind of got to go through the struggle, and you got to know why it's worth risking your life for. You know, you got to know why being in this world and sacrificing and risking yourself to it is worth it. It's like marrying that beautiful childlike, I mean, I think true childlike innocence is like, in its fullest form and its deepest form, is married with that understanding of deep tragedy. You know, this is maybe that temperance of like marrying the earthly realm of blood and death with the spirit of infinity and of like magic, of just, you know, total possibility. And they I mean, I think that's what we're trying to become, humans. Like, that's the maturation, is learning to become humans. What are humans for? That's Wendell question. And there is something obviously awesome about being a kid and Peter Pan and all of that, but without that other piece of it, it's not fully formed. It's I don't know, there's something that I don't know, there's a missing of depth in that.
Yeah. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I am trying to connect some stuff that I've also heard recently in podcasts and stuff. And I think there's something about, I mean, the critique of our current age being so like feelings driven, and being like so much letting your emotions be the narrator of reality. And I think that ties into teenagehood, because if that's the period in life where your hormones are all over the place, and you're like literally you feel everything so intensely that you start to believe, well, I guess this is what reality is, because it's taking over everything. Yeah, I think that, and then it all becomes about that desperate like desire to get some release from those like overlord emotions. So yeah, I think there's something there as well. Maybe the age we're in, if everything, I guess we've talked about this, like a loss of connection with reality. I think boredom is also linked to that, in a sense that if you start getting your personal story or your feelings or something as like the axis upon which everything lands, then yeah, like no one's story is important enough that you won't get bored about it, I think. like no, I don't think no one, if you see just yourself as the thing, not in connection with anything else, I think I would get bored of myself as well. But yeah, I don't know. But another thing I was thinking about earlier when Sarah was talking about the different medicines, I don't know how true this is, but it feels like something I've heard, which is, I think a lot of those medicines have in principle the idea that the body knows how to heal itself, and it's more about like creating the conditions for that to happen, not necessarily diagnosing something and then adding another variable that might add other things and then you have what you were talking about, Sarah, before. So in that same sense, I was wondering, like, is there something like that for art? Like, does art heal itself, and how does that happen? What do we need for
I love that.
to heal itself, if it's a thing? I don't know.
I love that. I feel like this is something that Paul tells me all the time when I'm stressing out about any kind of artistic endeavor. He says that if I'm happy and like, you know, I'm doing the things that I need to do to be happy and healthy, psychologically, spiritually, physically, then I will create art. I don't need to worry about creating art. If I'm doing all the things to put the right conditions are set up, then I will create art. So like, and I think that's totally true, because I mean, experientially, it just is like, if I give myself a couple of days off, then I can't help but pick up something like clay or pencil or pen or whatever it is. And I think that's true of everyone. And I think it's something like, instead of trying to make art do a thing, instead of instrumentalizing art and saying this is going to pay my bills, or this is going to make me famous, or this is going to impress my friends, or even this is going to create a picture or a sculpture or anything, instead of doing that, just like surrendering to the flow of this strange thing that is art. And I don't know if it will heal itself or if it will heal us, but it will do what it's got to do. Like this, and there is something very like, that's a lot of weight lifted off your shoulders as an artist, right? Because then you're just like, oh, I'm just in service to this mad thing called art, and that's that. And I don't need to take responsibility for how it ends up manifesting. All I have to do is let it come out and through. And that makes me think of, like, you know, the ancient Greeks and how they would talk about art as coming through your genius or through your daemon or whatever, instead of through the individual person. Like our contemporary idea that there is an artist and they create the art, as I said before, it's a very modern idea, and you know, it allows us to have famous artists, I guess, but it also allows us to get so caught up and identified with the product of our art, and that's really bad news for artists and probably for the world. There's something very freeing just saying, like, I don't know, it just came out of me.
Yes, I'm not the author, and I know, like, something I learned from reading about Mayan tradition, and this comes through for me a lot, is like the most beautiful pieces I give to nature. Like, you actually give your best pieces, you don't show them to other people. Give it back to the source from which it came. And that's for me a big piece of it too. It's like, right, that bone flower things, and it's like, it's so awesome to go give it to a tree. Like, it's just like the best feeling in the world. The black widow, I made this black thing for this black widow, and it just, and yeah, so that goes with that kind of, like, not for commodity, but then that humility, engendering that humility too, where it's like, this is like, it's not really mine. It's like, I didn't write this piece. I actually did not write this piece. This piece just, I'm just the vessel, I'm the instrument. Something breathed it into me, something blew this into me. And I'm just thankful that I was the conduit for it, you know. That's all.
And the reason why, like Sarah was saying, that Alex Ebert piece, like people abusing artists, the reason why people could do that is because they're not seeing the artist as the conduit, they're seeing the artist as the author. And artists are being the author, to be fair. It's not like the audience are just doing it by themselves, or artists are taking on that role and saying, look at my art. And even just like signing paintings is not something that has been done throughout time, throughout cultures. Lots of cultures still don't, artists don't sign their work like that. And I think there's something there about the way we feel about our identities as well, and our personalities, as if we create ourselves.
That brings up for me, like, each of us being a piece of art, you know, each of us as a piece of art that is both being shaped and shaping our own. There's like some great invisible artist that is like always working us, and then we're responding back to it, kind of like clay, where, you know, it gives you that feedback, but that there is something so much bigger and greater at play here. And that goes back to what Rebecca was saying, I think, about surrender. There's a process to surrender, is such a important piece of all of this.
It's so fucking hard.
Yeah. There's so much, like, there's so much malware, there's so much density, you know. It's just fucking dense in here, and it can be so hard to be elastic with it.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of ridiculous that it's so hard, because I mean, if we look at reality, how much of ourselves did we make?
Mm.
We didn't make our appearance. We didn't make our IQ. We didn't make where we were born. We made basically nothing of ourselves, and now we want control of what? Of what exactly? Like, you have your clay, and I don't know. But I was thinking, but I can't remember in which of, because I'm reading multiple books at the moment. But there was something about the great man doesn't have to do anything, or the great woman doesn't have to do anything. She simply have to be. And maybe that's motivation for just letting yourself be made into someone great, and then just being.
Wow. Yeah. That's like super present too for this full moon because of always with the sun and the moon, you're focused on like the will of the ego versus existing. The moon is just existing. It's just reflecting, the sun is beaming his light on her whenever he can, when she can hide away, but that's the interesting dynamic there too. A full moon is just having that ego that really wants to assert its will and be seen and be known for the things. And this comes up in a lot of our conversation too, just of the masculine and feminine dynamic, the yin and the yang. Why don't we, we're presenting our closed door discussions, because it's literally like at this point we're just like something any sort of like realization that we're actually participating in this too would be great. We don't have to have our name on it. We'll be Coven. Basic. Just see that this is happening when you're not looking to. Like, great that you can get up on stage and be the representative and bring the followers, and that's cool. But this is not just you. It's not just your conversation. It's not just your book of, whatever, however many, you know what I mean? We can get up on a soapbox, and it's beautiful because it also brings the masculine in. It brings the young masculine in, the young masculine that needs to be led, that needs to be initiated, that needs to know what's happening in this world. But they're leaving out a big footnote that says, you are cradled by the feminine. Everything you announce, everything you create, it's held in a medium. And we're holding that space for you to be relevant. And you're not reciprocating that in some instances. Now, we do have some instances where we are being validated, where we are being seen finally, but that's the thing. And it's not me that wants to be seen. It's just this collective. It's just this voice of, it doesn't have to be so all about one person. It can be about a collective. It can be about a group. That's what most of these wonderful books that we read are, is a collection of people's perspectives.
Yeah, it makes me think of the I just recently read a book called The Reenchantment of Art, which is amazing. And she talks about the new aesthetics, and she has a critique of modernism. And the critique is basically what we've been saying today, which is there's art, and the author of that art, and then everyone gathers around and looks at it. And she's like, no, art should be much more person to person. So there's art in the way that Sarah has chosen to put the moon on her forehead, and there's art in the words that I'm saying to her and to you, and there's art in the gesture that I make when I greet a friend, and there's art in hugs, and there's all this art, this web of art that keeps us all together. But it's all ephemeral, or it's not all ephemeral, but a lot of it is ephemeral and personal, just between one or two people. But that doesn't make it not art. And it doesn't make it not valuable. And perhaps, in aggregate, that stuff is the most valuable stuff, because, as you're saying, it's the medium. And I think there's this, and this woman, Susie Gablick, is calling for a recognition of that, and a kind of a breakdown of that modernistic frame of author audience. And again, I just feel like this keeps coming up for me, but that the process, the space between the audience and the author, that's where the art happens. There's this great book called Drawing on the Right Hand Side of the Brain, I think. And she says, it's a book that teaches you how to draw. And she says in that the art isn't what's on the paper, it's the state your brain goes into when you start drawing. And there was just something about that, like about that reframe. I feel like it's really important to whatever you want to call it, lunar, feminine, whatever, like that aspect. That's what we need to like collapse into, because it's there. It's not like it's not there.
It reminds me of I had this class, don't remember too well, but it was something about anthropology, and it was this whole debate about, because we were looking at a lot of like Central American, like indigenous groups and the kind of like crafts they were making. There was this whole debate about like, when is it like craft, when is it art, what makes it what, like what framing. And I don't remember too much what the conclusion of that was, but there was this quote that I keep trying to find and I can't really find the exact one, but it was something along the lines of like art being the frame of the window by which you choose to see things. And I really like that, because it just shows that then art is your medium to reality, basically, right? Like there's something there's that landscape, and the art is the way you choose to frame it. So it's not really the final product, as you said. It's not the print that's going to come out of that. It's just that act of entering in that relationship with reality and putting in the attention and putting in the space that something needs for that relationship to happen. I think I see it that way now.
I'm playing with nihilism, and even before I started doing this course, during one of the meditations that John had for patrons, he sometimes have like little meetings for patrons where he leads. We did like that meditation of his where you ask, "Who am I?" to you just ask it, and he kept telling me, "I'm nothing, I'm nothing, I'm nothing." And now this nihilism course deals a lot with nothing. So I'm also reading this book. And when you said art is the frame, a window is basically nothing. So art may be that structure which we give to the nothing that we are. And I don't mean it in a negative sense. I don't feel bad when I say I'm nothing. I feel, well, Rebecca, I'm thinking of a ritual that I want to make around that. So staring into the abyss, embracing the abyss, the nothingness.
Well, the nothingness contains everything. The nothingness contains all of it. So the nothingness is actually everything. It's full.
Your potential.
Full. Oh yeah, it's so full, the nothingness.
It reminds me of the introduction of the zero. So that was like an invention. And that concept of zero and allowing you to go into the negative with that. Now you can visit space that isn't real. Yeah.
Well, that's the fool. The fool is zero. The fool is everything and anything is possible. Anything and everything is possible. Right. And then you get back to the universe card, which then puts something into that middle of that zero, the completion kind of, the manifestation. So it's that fool and maybe that innocence, which doesn't necessarily have to be naive. It's just that sense of like an open field, a landscape where anything's possible. And then that discernment, maybe it's that temperance of figuring out what to fit what where, how to assemble it, how to put it together. Yeah, temperance, to temper something, it's to get the right amount of hardness, just the right amount of hardness to something, the right amount of form. maybe it's that fittedness that Vervaeke often talks about.
There was something here too with the etymology that it's related with the word temple also,
Ooh.
which is cool because we've been kind of talking about encasing and things like that. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, you build the temple and you see what God wants to come visit.
And temple, and then there's something about time too with a temple, right? There's generally it's like based on some sort. Well, maybe not always, but there's some sort of alignment with maybe something.
Yeah,
In
usually the
time,
temples are built
celestial.
with exactly where the sun's setting in different seasons, and they were obviously incredibly deliberate about where they built the temples, because the temple was, like you said, that structure that allows the art to be elevated and revealed. The temple showed how incredible the sunlight could come, or getting those things into alignment, to turn our attention. That's a big part of this. It's like we're talking sort of about surrendering and all of that, but there's like such agency that we have over where we place our attention. Like, and this goes back to what I was talking about with like feeding the monsters. It's like, am I going to place my attention there, or am I going to place my attention over here? And which one's gonna be the artist move? Which one's gonna have more art and beauty in this world? Which one's gonna also benefit my future self? What is my future self gonna say? Man, thanks for that temperance, or thanks for turning your attention to that instead of this other thing, because now there's more possibility for you.
The eternal in time and space. That's what I'm hearing. The eternal into time and space time.
When I was looking at this original Rider-Waite-Smith card, I got really hung up on the red wings. So that's so cool. Why are they red? And I did a bit of Googling around, and I came across I think they're the seraphim. They're like the angels that are just all the time singing the praises of God. That's all they do. They just sing holy, 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 non-stop. Yes. And so I just have this vision of this character once he's taken his time, or she. It's kind of androgynous character, which is perfect. Again, in the Crowley card, the same thing, androgyny. When they turn around, just the whole thing becomes red, and they head off up that mountain in devotion to whatever came through. Like they built the temple, and then whatever came, and off they went to worship it. I know, I love it. I feel like it's a moment on a journey.
Yes.
Well, can we lead me into my next journey?
My candle has literally just gone out.
Perfect.
Like as I was speaking.
I actually blew mine out a while back because it almost went out, and I was like, oh, supposedly I need to use it in the end ritual. And then it's all gone. So I don't.
No, I was going to suggest we blew them out at the end, but mine's already finished.
Mine is also.
Light mine again. I was thinking we're going to we'll do something. I was hoping no one saw, but now I told. So.
It's been revealed.
So if you have the hagstone altar or whatever you have, let's just raise it up and acknowledge it. And if it's still burning, let's say goodbye to this sacred moment and blow it out.
I love you all very much.
And shall we say, yeah, let's offer 3 I'm here breaths to this moment and to this space that we're in. And then 3 palms down to the great below that we'll all visit soon. and 3 breaths to the great above, which we will ascend to, singing holy, holy, holy. Cheers. Happy Lammas.
Happy Lama.
I only have water left. Happy Lammas.
Oh, that was glorious. Thank you.
Thank you all. This was
Yeah,
beautiful.
so beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Kind words. Love you all.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.